This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about WandaVision Episode 2.
I've heard things about you. You and your husband.
Well, I don't know what you have been told. But I assure you, I don't mean anyone any harm.
I don't believe you. Who is that? Who are you?
Wanda. Who's doing this to you, Wanda? Wanda. What?
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. And this is episode 2 of WandaVision. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of the other hosts, Derek.
And rounding out this trio, I am John Derek. I'm sorry. I'm Chris. I'm just so used to going WandaVision. You just combine names now. That's how you do it.
I was thinking of doing a track underneath the entire podcast, just going WandaVision over and over again, all the way underneath. But it probably gets quite annoying if it goes on for an hour.
I guess so. Yeah.
It could be worse. We could just be saying "for the children."
Yeah, that's true. Welcome back, fellow Defenders. Great to be back for this episode. This is something that we don't normally do. We normally are very lucky in that we get some previews for episodes of the shows that we cover, and we record them day one and put them out. We decided to do episode 1, as you know, the day of release, and then episode 2, we put out the call for all your feedback, asked you what you thought of the episodes, and now we're recording our thoughts on episode 2. And boy, did you all deliver. We have got loads of great feedback. And guys, wait till you get to the feedback section. Loads and loads of our wonderful listeners that we haven't heard from in a while, because obviously Marvel's been off air for a year and a half. So there's lots of special guests returning for our feedback section.
Yes, we sent out the fiery call a la Lord of the Rings, and you answered. You answered Rohan. Yes, you did.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a Lord of the Rings reference.
It is. I can't think of a Marvel reference, but I'm sure they did something like that.
My God, it's been so long since I've done Lord of the Tolkien-esque anything or even thought about it.
Well, with the Lord of the Rings series coming up, we may need to brush back up on our Lord of the Rings stuff. But John, you could have easily gone for the on your left call out.
Well, I guess.
Which brings everybody back together with in the end of Endgame, you know?
Okay, look, my brain's melted, alright.
But the good news...
I forgot that one.
Hold on, let's just do a quick time turning. Backwards, and...
Yes, we did on your left, and of course our lovely fellow Defenders responded by turning up with their sling rings and to give us feedback. Indeed.
I'm not even editing that out, John. That was really good. But the good news for everybody that sent us in feedback, as we mentioned last episode, you are in with the chance of getting your hands on some WandaVision goodies, some WandaVision Funko Pops that are on the way to us at the moment. I just got the notification that they're on their way. So they will be available. We'll be picking somebody out of the hat who has sent us in feedback anytime during the series. If you want to send us in feedback, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts about any of the episodes that they go. We're going to be recording Saturday mornings for the rest of the series, so it gives you time to watch the episodes. They're only half an hour, and pop us in some feedback as soon as you've seen them. We also have a second competition for a separate set of WandaVision Funko Pops, which is our pub quiz competition, right, John?
Yep, that is true. We'll have a pub quiz question on the episode on each podcast.
Yep.
So again, send in your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And of course, remember feedback, you can send that in to our Facebook group on our spoiler posts for each episode at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Exactly.
Yes. And of course, you can also support us by heading on over to tvpodcastindustries.com and subscribing to the podcasts on any Wiccan or Android loving podcast player of your choice, fellow defenders.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to give a shout out to all of our wonderful defenders who've been sharing our podcast as well. It's really, really good way to support us. There's loads of people covering these shows, of course, but if you like our show, share it on social media, share it with your friends, share it with your family. As Chris used to say, share it with your granny and granddad, with your kids. You know, everybody should be watching this show. It's a real family orientated show. And in that vein, I do want to give a shout out to Alfie Blaze, a new listener who's joined us because his dad, one of our regular listeners, shared the podcast with him. So, thank you very much and thanks for listening, Alfie.
Thanks, Alfie. And thanks, Richard.
Exactly. Isn't that cool? I know we've been podcasting a long time, as I said to Richard, but I didn't realize it was that long. 2 generations now listening to the podcast. Anyway, let's get into our discussion about this episode. The episode was written by Gretchen Enders. She's written a number of episodes of the brilliantly named family TV show Gortimer Gibbon's Life on Normal Street. I absolutely love that name.
That is cool.
Yeah, I think it's actually a Disney Channel TV show or one of those TV shows for that's family oriented. So I've never seen an episode of it, but it gets quite a lot of good ratings from its viewers. But I just absolutely love the name. She's also written an episode of Grace and Frankie, the Netflix comedy with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, which is fab. I love the two of those. They're two of my favorite actors. Really, really good. So great to have Gretchen on board here. Lots of knowledge within the sitcom world, let's say. So great to have her on board here. Once again, episode directed by one of the showrunners, Matt Shakman, who I think directs all the episodes, but we'll know more about that as the season goes on. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. In a new decade, Wanda and Vision go out of their way to impress the neighbourhood as they prepare for their magic show for the local community fundraiser that's for the children.
For the children.
But Wanda just wants to fit in. In their black and white utopia of Westview, strange things are afoot with bumps in the night, coloured toys, and strange radio messages. Wanda meets Dottie, the queen of the cul-de-sac, controller of country club membership, school admissions, and head of the fundraiser committee. But her decorum doesn't impress, yet Wanda just wants to fit in. At the local neighbourhood watch meeting, Vision gets all gummed up as he tries to fit in. Despite some hitches with their magic act, Wanda and Vision's performance impress their neighbours, and things are on the up as they look forward to becoming parents with a baby on the way. Wanda and Vision begin to fit in. But as night comes to Westview, a noise outside leads them to a strange figure who certainly doesn't fit in. Threatened, Wanda reverses time to escape, and a new colourful reality in Westview opens up to fit them in.
For the children.
For the children. They're great, they're good. It is such a Hot Fuzz reference.
It really did feel like it, didn't it? Yeah.
Because that's a like town community council as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, for the children.
Absolutely. Yeah, really, really interesting. When I wonder if that will come back in some later points of the season. I'm sure there's part of it could be a reference to the fact that Wanda is pregnant by the end of the episode. So potentially this whole thing was built for the children. So I'm wondering, there's loads and loads of questions about this episode. Obviously, as we watch, loads and loads of weird stuff going on. Let's get into our top 5 points for the episode. Point number 1, let's just talk about kind of the general setting, just like we did last episode. What's the inspiration for it? What kind of tropes are in there from the comedy of the period, for comedy of the time. This episode is very heavily influenced, I think, from Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. 2 shows very similar from the 60s where a husband and wife are living in a normal community and the wife has magic powers. In Bewitched, a witch. In I Dream of Jeannie, a genie. Because very straightforward explanation of what those shows are. But very specifically, I think the opening titles that we see in here, where we have an animated version of Wanda and Vision flying through the air on the black and white background, that's definitely Bewitched.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah, and even seeing when Vision eats the chewing gum, and it goes to like almost a cartoon inside, and seeing the gum clog up his cogs. I guess.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to just jump in very quickly, because again, we talked about in the first episode, for those who are joining us, thank you. If you haven't listened to our episode 1 review, please jump back and you will understand what I'm talking about. But as a child of the 80s, this in the UK and Ireland, I only started to get the coloured versions of I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched. So I'm starting to get some of the tropes, the references, the cultural touchstones.
Yeah.
Starting. Like, the commitment to the period is just astounding.
Absolutely. It really is, you know, and I think, while I'm not that much older than you, Chris, I know my mom was such a big fan of I Love Lucy and of Bewitched, and these shows used to play on a Saturday morning for us. So in the days when we had like 12 TV shows that repeated from the 60s all the way to the 80s, just every week, everybody watched the same thing. So, so we definitely didn't have the vast amount of TV shows that people have available to them now, I suppose. So we definitely saw a lot of Bewitched and a lot of I Dream of Jeannie, which I suppose in this setting and the kind of basic concept of this storyline in this episode, it really does feel like one of those 600 or 700 episodes of TV, which had a magic user and their husband, effectively, in those shows, trying to do something to impress the community. In this case, we have the setup is it's an actual magic user and a scientifically impossible person putting on a magic show just fake enough to be accepted by the local community. It can't be overly magic or else the community will wonder how weird they are. It can't be really bad or else the community won't be impressed by them. So, and so I kind of love that setup, but it does feel like something straight out of Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie.
And I think as well, like the opening, part of this with the two beds, side by side, that is a real kind of touchstone, I think, in, I guess, the era of having a husband and wife in separate beds. And I like, you know, them coming together, dare I say it, to provide a baby, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I have a little bit of a reference for that one, John. That's very well put on our PG podcast. Very good. I have a little bit of a reference to that one. When movies and TV shows were originally created, the studios formed a group called the Hayes Office, and effectively they were the people that created this idea that you couldn't have any couple in bed together on TV. You wouldn't show the bedroom. If you had to show a bedroom, you put them in two separate beds. The first TV show to actually put them in a double bed together was Bewitched. Yeah. And that was back in the 60s. So I love that this is a very specific reference. It's almost, remember last episode we were talking about the characters were in the 50s. This episode opens with them in these two separate beds. The two beds merge together and then it goes into the opening credits showing we're now in the 60s. We're now in Bewitched. So that is just indicating that that's what's happening. They're merging together and coming into the 60s. The end of this episode is now showing going into color, going into the 70s. So
yeah, and it literally is beds and banging.
Well,
with the noises outside coming from the tree, and of course we do get an immaculate conception here.
Well, it's not that immaculate when the beds are pushed together, at least.
Yeah, but I don't quite know how Vision can accomplish that.
So I'm going through Lovecraft Country, and can you imagine, like, each episode having the simple premise like that? Like, a single. It's like, we're going to have one thing, you're going to meet a couple of people, and that's it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even though I've not watched it, something like Bridgerton, you know, a period piece that is now, you know, I guess maybe making people that watch that slightly uncomfortable because it's so hot and steamy. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, my mom had to turn that off after 3 episodes. She loves period dramas. She was like, this might be a little too much for me.
It is raunchy.
My better half, I shall say, was watching it, and I was making dinner, and I was like, dude, okay, it's like Downton Abbey with a bit more periody. Okay, I can't have this on when I'm cooking because this is going to distract me. I'm going to cut off my finger.
Or burnt dinner.
That's not a period piece.
I love it. But yeah, you're right, Chris. Like this show and this episode of WandaVision is a very straightforward premise, but I love that they're balancing the two things, the current sensibility of there's a big mystery behind almost every word that's said in this show, but they also have this very simplistic layer of exactly what would have been there in sitcoms in the 60s.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I love that even the resolution, I suppose, to that simple premise is drunken magic show, effectively this gumming up of Vision where he becomes like a drug person coming in and everybody just finds it funny. It could have completely ruined the idea that they're just a normal couple in the neighborhood because he's using his scientific powers. His ability to fly is what he's using in front of all these people here who would have no concept of of this idea that somebody could fly. You know, he's a superhero. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. But I love that, you know, Wanda clicks her fingers and it turns into, oh, it's all done by wires. So as long as they can explain it, they'll accept it. I think it's really funny.
But that was really, really good. Because, yeah, when he started to float, I thought, here we go. This is going to be the moment where I guess, you know, the, behind the trick is revealed, you know, Wanda and Vision are revealed. And you then have Wanda sort of twitching her fingers to get the wires in and all of this. Again, I love Paul Bettany as well doing that magic trick. I thought him with Herbert, also known as Sherbet, with the card trick, it was just like so good.
It's hilarious.
All the different
he goes through every single, doesn't he go through every single card in the deck? He's left with one card and goes, is this your card? And Herbert goes, oh my God, it is.
I know, it was just so stupid, but really good. I like even the opening scene with Paul Bettany where the two of them are in bed and, you know, he's trying to be the man and the next thing he's clutching at the bed sheets all frightened because of the noise outside. Yeah. Like, I don't know, there's something with his facial expression, which is just kind of just perfect for this type of comedy.
He is loving it, you can tell.
And it's kind of interesting. I don't know whether on the talent show where he's, you know, kind of drunk from the clogging up of his insides, but it's like he went much more London in his accent. He kind of more Cockney kind of coming out. I don't, you know, or South London kind of thing.
Yeah,
he really did seem to go much more into that, you know, as when anyone is kind of drunk, they
all go Cockney.
They all kind of, you know, go into a more natural accent, I guess.
So yes, fellow listeners, as John gets more intoxicated on the weekends, he does go Cockney, just in case you're wondering.
I do not.
He goes very Liverpudlian.
Liverpool!
That's it on the basic setup for the episode, though, is that that's kind of our first point.
Yes.
Should we talk about the other part of the episode that is also a pretty basic setup? So there's actually two main storylines that are going on. The Fundraising Committee is our second point, because we need to talk about a couple of things that happen in the Fundraising Committee.
This is kind of more, where things become a bit odd and a bit strange. And in a sense, I think Vision he's kind of insulated from this. He's not really seeing this.
Yeah.
But I think Wanda is the one where these strange things are happening. And I guess even with the bumps in the night, you know, it's shown to be a tree banging against the window, but that final bump outside when they get outside, and we'll come to that in another point, that's the one where it really exposes something different. But
can I just pull it for a second, since we didn't mention it, just because you're mentioning that opening scene where there's a tree branch is knocking on the window. Honestly, because it's the MCU, all I kept thinking was, is this going to end off that it's Groot outside this universe smacking on the walls of the universe trying to wake up Wanda? Is that what it is? They're going to have the budget to do Groot on TV at the end of the series, you know? Because it absolutely could happen.
Yeah.
This is apparently one of the most expensive TV shows ever made. 150 million for 9 episodes. More expensive than Game of Thrones, more expensive than Friends' final season, where every member of the cast was paid £1 million just for showing up. So they absolutely could do some big things with the universe. But I love the idea that this could be Groot outside trying to wake her up. Just struck my attention.
Yeah, exactly.
But can I jump in? The one thing before we kind of get into the ins and outs of the actual subcommittee and stuff, the interesting part here is that the supporting cast is growing.
Yes.
So that's one I just wanted, before we actually talk about the individual cast members. The last episode, we had 4 people in the cast outside of Wanda and Vision. You had the 2 Hearts, you had Agnes, and then we had Norm in the office who was working with Vision.
Yeah.
That was the 4 members. Now we're expanding out and you have this whole other cast. And I'm going to put a bit of theory in here in that I think these are other humans, like not constructs or stuff. These are people stuck in there as well. In the supporting, we mentioned in episode 1, there was these weird credits.
Yeah.
I think those are going to be some of the names.
Interesting.
Going
maybe.
that flow through. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it is interesting that we see that they are expanding the cast so much so quickly. And it was that sitcom trope that as the sitcoms got bigger, and the productions and TV got bigger, you could have more cast members.
Yeah.
And that's how these happened. But it's
as we mentioned last episode, there was 2 sets that were used. One was the house with the kitchen, and the other set was the office. Basically, this episode they go outdoors.
Yep.
They go to the
town hall.
You've
got the house set still. You've got the country club with the swimming pool.
Yeah. So it's a much bigger endeavor in the second episode versus the first episode. Still much, much smaller than we'd see on a standard TV show nowadays.
But they're building out Westview as well. Yeah. This community, this town that they're living in as well. And of course, with that, then we get to see Dottie, the queen of the cul-de-sac, and the queen makers. I love that description by Agnes of who Dottie is.
Yeah.
And of course, Anya from Buffy plays Dottie as well.
Absolutely, and I know all fans of Buffy recognize Anya. One of her biggest traits is that she's not scared of anything. She's a very strong character, but scared of bunny rabbits, which was always the kind of comedy bit that the character of Anya had. So I love just before her introduction, you see Agnes handing over a bunny rabbit to Wanda, and then we get introduced to Dottie. So it's I'm sure that's a little reference to her character in Buffy there. Also, just one thing, because it was used in the trailers over and over again, Agnes, it's almost like she breaks the fourth wall because she's handing over the bunny rabbit to Wanda saying, "There's the star of the show." And Wanda suddenly kind of perks her ears up and goes, "What did you just say?" Yeah. And she goes, "Oh no, the rabbit is the star of the show." So I like that little, that little moment there. Cause again, weird stuff going on. But Chris, to your point, as you say, they're expanding the cast here. There's some people in here that potentially are pulled into the universe, because we have that exchange between Wanda and Geraldine, as she identifies herself.
Yes.
Where they're having a conversation there. And there's, again, an underlying bit of, underneath what she's saying. She says to Wanda, "I don't even know why I'm here."
Yeah.
And that there is that kind of thing where it's, maybe she doesn't actually mean this community meeting. Maybe she means in the bigger sense, I don't know how I got here, kind of thing.
And I think that's we also see that with Dottie when Dottie cuts her hand. There's this weird breaking of character, breaking of universe, fourth wall, whatever you want to call it. Or no, so it's not really the fourth wall. Like, if we imagine that what we used to call breaking of the fourth wall is now the fifth wall, because there's this other TV show within a TV show. Yeah. So technically, breaking of the fourth wall is breaking the TV show within WandaVision, and then breaking the fifth wall is now breaking the character of WandaVision into our reality.
And so, talking to us.
Yeah. So we'll call it breaking of the fourth wall in that sense is that TV show. Because there's that breaking of the character.
Look at you building new walls, Chris.
I know. It's almost like I'm a brickie. The underlying mystery is so interesting to me in this.
Yeah.
It's outside of the whole premise, outside of being in the MCU, this is almost like, and God forbid me, I hate to say this, because I'm about to use a trope, this is very Lost.
Oh, yeah.
It is like, there is just this weird mystery in the background. Like, Lost was essentially a castaway show with this weird kind of, when I say castaway, I meant like castaway on the tropical island, like Gilligan's Island, like you're a wreck island. And there was just this weird mystery of what happened, what's going on in the background. This is essentially just a sitcom with this weird underlying mystery in the background. It was almost like if Bewitched had this ongoing narrative thread.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do love the fact that you mentioned Dottie cutting her hand, but did once mention that we see red blood coming out of her hand in a black and white TV show. So a nice kind of what the heck's just happened here, because I presume you wouldn't see blood on TV even when people cut their hands back in these shows either. So her having red blood coming out of her hand and kind of having that moment of going, what's going on, and then resetting herself into the character, I suppose.
But that's it. And it's also the idea that we see the red blood. We guess that, and from Wanda's reaction, that she sees the red blood, but Dottie presumably doesn't. She's not seeing that, I guess. Well, because she just talks about, I mean, she knows she's cut herself and she knows it's blood, but whether she's seeing the colour, because she doesn't make any reference to it. But of course, with Wanda, it's the link back to what she saw in the hedge, because then Dottie is simply talking about, what's the best way of getting out a bloodstain? But I think it's that kind of, it's that kind of writing which is really good, because it's something of shock value with the blood being red in a black and white world. But everyone else playing it relatively straight, other than Wanda. And I think, you know, it comes to the point where, you know, Wanda is saying, I think we got off on the wrong foot here to Dottie. And she goes, you know, I don't mean you any harm. And Dottie is simply saying, but I don't believe you. Yeah. And it's that idea of, you know, that actually is really sinister, again, like we talked about in the first episode, as to what that means, because we know the power of Wanda and what she can do. But this is probably simply Dottie saying, I know, or she thinks that Wanda is coming for her Queen of the Cul-de-sac title. Yeah. That's the harm here, is that she's going to usurp her, in, you know, the great, sort of, pyramid of community power, I guess.
Absolutely. I have to say, just some of the writing as well with those scenes, are just really funny. I love when you have Dottie talking to the lady who's standing up first, who's giving all the details about the fundraising event. And she's giving like these amazing, like intricate details about everything that's going on. And she asks her, what about the chairs? But she can't answer the question. So she goes, well, don't ask me to chair any committees then. It's like the power is so corrupting her, I suppose. This little power that she has in the local community. It's really, really funny writing. Last thing we probably need to speak about, in this community scene, obviously, is the big break into the world, the radio message that's coming through. That kind of breaks into, the Beach Boys' Help Me Rhonda.
Yeah.
Which I do wish was Help Me Wanda, of course, because it would work so much better, but it sounds kind of like Wanda. But the breaking in of this message from potentially the outside world, from someone that's clearly familiar with Wanda, because he's calling her by her first name.
There was a split moment where I thought it was Captain America's voice.
I was wondering whether it was Chris Evans as well. Yeah,
but I guess it's not, but just for the moment, maybe it's just that kind of all-American kind of accent that's coming from, or just the time period. But it's like, for a split moment, I was like, is that Steve Rogers? Yeah. Is it? But I guess it's not.
I was wondering whether it could be Happy Hogan potentially, in there. Potentially, there's loads of other people that could be, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch and Doctor Strange. Potentially Doctor Strange is making a connection, trying to work out how to get in contact with her. But I couldn't work out the voice. I genuinely have listened to this little clip so many times and cannot work out whose voice it is, but, we will, I'm sure, find out as the series goes on.
Well, I think the important thing as well from that radio message, you know, they say, Wanda, can you read me? And it goes kind of into music, and then Wanda, who's doing this to you? Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, in terms of what we were talking about, in the last episode around, you know, is she in her mind, or is it something else? You know, this really kind of just takes that to mean, it sounds like either it is that Truman Show type thing where she, is being contained and put into an alternate reality. And then, you know, this idea that maybe this expanding list of characters in the neighborhood are people that are simply just kind of managing her and watching her. And then, but I also then just wondered, well, is that the case, or is it something where she is being contained because of what happens at the end? You know, I mean, effectively you have, as Chris was saying, that breakthrough, into this world. Mm-hmm. You know, this external, unusual object or person, like at the end. And in this case, the radio message. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. She's still creating this world, but it's being contained because maybe it's a danger to something, or has this world been created for her that she can manipulate, and is being housed? So it's almost like a Truman Show type thing.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
I'll very quickly just state my opinion at this point is based on what they're setting up. It's just that who's doing this to you leads me more to the credence of that she has, like, something happened. She went in as an Avenger to fix it and is now kind of imprisoned almost. It's happening to her versus what we assumed was happening was that more she was devastated by the loss of Vision. She is creating a kind of reality where she can have Vision back again. That's where I thought it was with episode 1. Because she told Vision to fix it. She controlled that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm now less of in that camp. I am now more in the camp of probably they are manipulating her to control. She does have some power, some element of control in there. I just think it's more that things are happening to her.
She definitely has some control because she rewinds time within that space.
Well, before we get into all of that, because those are kind of the rest of our points, let's go into our ad break. I love this ad break. I have to comment on this one, right? I'm the Nick Fury fan.
Yes.
So this is the one for me, basically. The Hydra Watch from a company called Strucker. Yes. Really important character for me. Yeah. I remember we did our coverage of Age of Ultron, and this was the most egregious use of one of my favorite characters from comic books that the Marvel Universe has ever done, because I was so excited seeing that they had cast Baron Wolfgang von Strucker, the absolute greatest enemy of Nick Fury, going back to his Sergeant Fury comic books. They cast him, they had him in the movie, he was in there for about 10 minutes and then ran away, gave himself up, and then died. So that's kind of it. That's all they used him for. But what's really important for this show, we mentioned last episode that the ad break was about Stark Technology, Stark Industries, making the toaster. They'd also made, effectively, Vision. Stark had made Vision. So this time, the ad break in here about the watch is about Baron Wolfgang von Strucker. The watch is called Strucker. He's the person who created Wanda and her brother Pietro. He's the one that gave them superpowers in Sokovia. So these little ad breaks that are in there aren't just references to the universe. They're also, so far, these two anyway, have been about the creation of the two main characters of the show, which I think is a really interesting kind of background to the two of them. And
the tick-tock of the watch gets faster towards the end of the advert. Again, a bit like with the toaster. So again, maybe something there around the time element. Yeah. But I love the fact that they do put Swiss made on there still, like, so good. Just every watch has Swiss made.
Of course.
Really good. Yeah. And the little Hydra symbol as well. Yes. On the face of the watch.
Of course.
I'm hoping the merchandise people are going to make that. So, they're going to have to at some point. Cause,
Derek
that
is so gonna buy it.
Yeah. Because literally there's so many people would buy that. Like a Strucker watch with the Hydra symbol and everything. Can I say one very quick thing? Mm-hmm. I am hoping it is just that. I am hoping it is an ad break. It is just, it will transition us perfectly into our next point. I'm hoping the Hydra is a reference just to Strucker and just to the ad break and just to Scarlet Witch and Pietro. I'm hoping Hydra is not the big bad behind this, because I'm like, oh God, guys, come on. You've got so many. You've got AIM. You've got so many other big bad organizations and bad guys. We've had our Hydra moments for now in the MCU. I know the whole theory of Hydra is cut one head off and a new one grows. There's another Hydra head. I just think you have so many I just don't think it needs to be Hydra in this situation. So I'm hoping this is a nice Easter egg ad break to Hydra.
Right. I don't think it will be Hydra coming back as the big bad in the show. I don't think it would work for the show. It doesn't make sense. I think the big bad is probably the mind of Wanda being controlled by somebody else. So that's more likely. But what I would love to see is the actor who plays Baron Strucker coming back for some form of flashback where we do see Pietro and Wanda getting created, or something going on with their creation, something like that. You've got a TV show with 9 episodes to fill worth of mythology for these characters effectively. So hopefully this is just a small reference that this is what's going on in her mind. She's playing on the creation of von Strucker, of her by von Strucker. And maybe we see some kind of flashback to that as the episodes go on. But I don't think it's going to be that Hydra are the big bads behind it all. You're right. That story has been played out, even though they were created in 1965 and have had amazing storylines over the years. For 40, 50 years. So.
But I think as well, I think moving to our point 4, what we're seeing reoccurring here is this sword symbol. And it's getting weirder in terms of now it's in colour with the helicopter. And we see that sword symbol on the side of the helicopter. I think when we first saw it, and I didn't quite know it was a helicopter, just seeing the red and yellow of like Iron Man's suit, I was just like going, oh, okay, is this some kind of fragment of the suit or something that is penetrating that wall, or this reality of Wanda? And, we see this helicopter, and now she gets interrupted by Agnes, and is that purposeful to distract her from, the helicopter, move her along, basically, which is again another little, nod towards, the people in this world, in this neighborhood with Wanda and Vision being, people to, move them along, mentor them, and get them, or stop them questioning things. But it's kind of interesting. It also had a number 57 on it, which I didn't know if that referred to anything.
Yep. So I'll jump in very quickly. To my understanding, and I've told you, is Avengers issue 57 is the introduction of Vision.
Oh, very good.
So,
very good.
There was an interview on Nerdist on YouTube with Nerdist and Matt Shankar, the showrunner, the creative, one of the writers and kind of creators of the show. He said that there's the prop master, for this show basically was given a bit of carte blanche. He was the prop master for like Captain America. He made the shield, etc. He got carte blanche just to go forward and run with it. So a lot of these, like, there are some deep cuts in this episode. And I think this was a deep cut that no one really got until the editing bay, because he says in this interview, it was in the editing bay I noticed stuff like this.
Yeah. And
you're
what is this number 57? Yeah. That's a cool little reference. That's a nice one that we see quite often in the movies in the past. In the MCU, we see references to their original appearance in comic books, or that the number at least appears. That's quite a cool idea. We've already mentioned the other kind of weird stuff that's going on in the episode. The blood coming out of Dottie when she cuts her hand. That's quite important. That's another sign of the red coming into the world, the color coming into the world. The radio message that we've already mentioned earlier on, as things kind of ramp up to the weirdness. That was kind of our point number 4, but we did talk about it a little bit already. So point number 5, we're just going to take out the weirdest things, I suppose, that happen in the episode. Our final point for this episode: the beekeeper and a baby. The
birds and the bees.
Well, there you go. Very good. Very good. I don't know why, but the first time I watched the episode, I kind of didn't realize. I don't know why. It's very silly of me, but that effectively at the beginning of the episode, we have them pushing the beds together. It's crawl under the covers together. And then at the end of the episode, she's pregnant. I didn't realize that they had specifically set it up in the episode that that's what had happened. Maybe I just had put it to the back of my mind by the end of the episode, but I thought it was quite funny.
Look at you going back to the 60s as well. I know. Your mindset. Yeah.
I know. I was totally going with it.
So we're going to have to sit down with Derek and explain how everything biology works.
So when a man and a woman
love each other, they give each other a special hug under the covers by magically pushing their beds together. And then within 30 minutes, a baby is created. Yeah.
But I do know enough about biology that that's not exactly how it happens every single time. And for the most part, somebody doesn't become quite heavily pregnant within 12 hours of people having sex. I kind of know that. She was noticeably pregnant when they returned back from their magic excursion, or not so magic excursion.
And the time dialed up, linking into the speeding up of the watch TikTok, the toaster ramping up till its final pop, maybe. So this is moving in, I guess, double, triple, quadruple speed or something.
Potentially,
at least for Wanda, anyway.
So can we reference the comic books here?
She has a high metabolism.
If people don't mind a little kind of sort of comic spoiler, the actual comic books between Wanda and Vision, in those comics, Wanda does have children, but she's created them herself. So they are magically created, I suppose. So that would kind of explain here why she's pregnant this quickly and why she's showing pregnancy this quickly. She would create them. I think John has an allusion earlier on to the fact that, well, you know, Vision's clearly an android. So how does this work between the two of them, and how would she be pregnant? But they are in a really weird universe here as well. So,
I have a Bender reference. Please insert Gerda.
Okay. Nice. But I do think it's interesting that they are pulling things. There's nothing here. I know everybody thought this was going to be the House of M storyline. Everybody thought this was going to be the Vision storyline from his own book. A lot of people referencing those kind of stories, but none of the episodes we've seen so far are directly connected to those shows. They're taking bits of them and creating something brand new here. We've never seen a comic book where Wanda and Vision are based in the 50s in a TV show. We've never seen that, or the 60s in a TV show. So they're taking little bits, but I think this is the first kind of big bit of their storyline. They're taking Wanda being pregnant with Vision's children, but magically pregnant.
Yes. And I think that's the core of crux of this, which is they're doing what we thought they were doing for, like, what they did with Civil War, which is they took a fantastic comic book storyline, and they took elements of it. So they took parts of all of these different bits and then put it all together. And I think this is what we're getting, the Tom King Vision universe. We're getting the original WandaVision from the 80s, 90s. We're getting parts of House of M. We're going to get other elements of it as well. They're going to pull in all these parts and these great storylines. It's all going to... I don't think this is not it's all connected. It's not a single storyline, which everyone assumed. And can I just jump in? This is one of the things I think
on myself.
I'm gonna interrupt myself. Chris, excuse me, that's a really good point. But what I really want to actually talk to you about is
okay. Stop the voices in there.
This is my own head. This is one of the issues I have with marketing right now, which is they have built the drum on this show so much. There was like all these 30-second teasers, 1-minute teasers online. And I get it. MCU's been gone for a year and a half. They had to drum up. They have overextended, I think, slightly they've given away partially too much and not enough. So I will very much call out that we, as an audience, or those who have watched some of the trailers or interviews, know who the character of Geraldine is, because it has been spoiled for us by the actors, the actresses, and the interviews. Yeah,
but everything for that character, when we saw the actress being revealed, we know exactly who her character name is. And we have talked about this, Defenders. We have talked about whether we'll talk about it on the podcast, who she is. Just to be clear, we're not going to talk about it until it's revealed on the show itself, because I actually think if you know who the character is, my speculation is, if you know who the character is, it kind of spoils her arc in the show. Yes. So I don't want to talk about it here on episode 2, because there are lots of people who are listening to us who know nothing about the comic books, know nothing about the characters, and may not have watched the movie. So we're not going to talk about who that character is. Here she's revealed as Geraldine. We know she's a major character on the show because we know that she's been in loads of interviews. So we will see how her character develops on the show rather than talking about it in advance, because there's no point in speculating on something we know.
Yes, so. Exactly. And I think that's the thing. When they did the House of M, the wine bottle, they have done the reveal of the pregnancy on some of the TV spots and the trailers. It's just, for me, this is like, you've given away slightly too much, but at the same time, and I think this is just this is not a problem. It is a product of the world we are in, but also it's a product of 2020/2021, which is we should have had a lot more MCU over the last while. Yeah. But now, in order to drum up the excitement, this shouldn't have been the first MCU property on Disney Plus. We should have had with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is an easier step in than Wanda and Vision.
And now that it is, marketing feel like they have to sell it more. That's kind of the big thing, because this is, even with all of the spoilers and even with all those trailer cuts and all those teaser trailers, I still had no idea what I was going to get in these 2 episodes. I still feel it's shocking. It's shockingly different from what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, we knew about the baby, but here we have Wanda pregnant. It's happy. They've just impressed everyone. They've won an award at the talent show.
Yes.
And of course, that suddenly begins to fold in on itself with this noise outside. And initially you kind of think it's just going to be the trees and the wind again.
Groot.
Or Groot maybe. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that one, but becomes more sinister. It's the fact that, you know, even if we think that Agnes and Herbert may be people that are planted there, they're not, they may not be, and they're not threatening as such at this moment in time. Whereas this takes on a completely different, dimension with this person coming out of the sewer up through the manhole cover, and that look and his face in darkness, really great. I loved how that was done, with the sword symbol on the back of the beekeeper suit.
Absolutely.
It's a beekeeper suit, but it wasn't until some of the feedback coming in that the look of the beekeeper also being a slight reference to AIM, and that was Cale Hensley that kind of pointed that out, that okay, it could be, but there's definitely then the sword symbol on the back there. And I think
because the constant joke about AIM is that their suits look like beekeeper suits. Why would bad guys wear those particular suits?
So that's kind of an interesting little element to it as well. But again, what really happens here is that we see Wanda has real control in whatever this construct is, because she reverses the time back to the point where they realize that she's pregnant, and it takes on a different pathway. So again, thinking of the time stone and the way the Ancient One described different timelines, but this is happening in a situation that maybe we don't know the full context of it just yet. It's still in its bubble. And that was really interesting. And also the fact that in the world turning to color, that moment where Wanda is doing that, because you see her red magical mist as it turns everything to color, which is an interesting thing as well, because it's definitely her power.
It's her power, definitely, but I don't think she knows she's doing it. She notices the red face of Vision first. Yeah. So it's a really, just to talk quickly about that rewinding of time. So she's threatened by this beekeeper that arrives. She's threatened by this intrusion into the perfect world, effectively. She says no, big word, no, reverses time back to a moment where she's really happy. The moment where she reveals her pregnancy, feels really safe, feels really happy with Vision, and asks the question, is this really happening to Vision? And Vision says, yes, it's happening. Effectively, I'm here, we're together, you're pregnant, we're now a happy couple. And then the world starts to turn to color. So it feels really like when threatened, she's able to reverse into a moment and change time. Exactly, a safe space, change time so that she's no longer threatened. I think it's what it feels like there. So, so whether, this is a fractured mind where she's in her safe space and there's people coming to save her from that or take her out of that space, we don't know yet, but that's kind of what it feels like here. But it's a cool moment.
Yeah, and it feels like a real external intrusion into this world as well. That's the thing. Like the manhole being, you know, the airlock into this world. So it is absolutely sawn from the outside world.
Yeah. So John, I think this is, in my view, this is, like you said, an intrusion. So essentially imagine that this is a pocket reality, if we will, okay? That if you were to see a guy in a hazmat suit for the first time, what would you imagine? Oh, it's a beekeeper. So when a helicopter, a real life helicopter flies over or into this, it suddenly becomes something from that time space. So there wouldn't have been a big helicopter like that. It would have just been a toy. So I think all these things that are happening, like they throw a walkie-talkie in and it's spouting out noise and it's then interpreted as a radio.
Right, very good.
So it's all these breaking is them trying to get into this reality, and that's how it's being interpreted by the person who is in control to a de facto control, or being controlled to create this reality, or has the ability to change. So I think someone has captured Wanda.
Okay.
They're controlling her. So as you said, like, she rewinds back to a safe space because they're doing stuff to her, and the way she escapes this, like, as you said, Strucker, right? He tortured them when he created them. If we think about how we were first introduced, they were in these rooms, kind of freaking out and like tortured to a degree by the stone.
Absolutely. That was the post-credit scene, wasn't it? When we were reintroduced to them in Age of Ultron, they volunteered to be experimented on, was how it was kind of framed.
Retconned,
we only saw them.
to a degree.
How it was framed, I'd say,
Framed is a good way.
All about the framing. All about the framing. That's a really interesting idea, Chris. You know, like, again, as I say, my little joke from this episode, potentially Groot tapping on the outside is transformed to a tree tapping on the window. Exactly.
Yes.
So she's kind of transforming the intrusions from outside into things that would fit within her world, or within this universe. But very interesting that we're
absolutely
suddenly in colour at the end of the episode. Let's see how that plays out in the next episode. Guys, that's it for our top 5 points for the episode. Anything else you wanted to talk about from the episode at all?
One very quick one, just which is interesting, and it probably has nothing to do with anything. It's just probably a fun Easter egg. But in the animated intro, we see the character of the Grim Reaper. In the background. The Grim Reaper is a old school villain, from the WandaVision universe, Avengers universe, who is, Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man, the superhero, an Avenger. It's his brother.
Right.
So we see Grim Reaper in that, view, and I'm like, Ooh.
You could tell people have been pausing the intro to this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've also seen it reported that exact background figure in the animated bit is the Wizard, who we saw in season 3 of Jessica Jones, who was also a character that was in WandaVision. So everybody's picking up on all the MCU little touchstones as well, aren't they, as they go through these episodes.
The final one is the carton of milk in the animated segment is Bova milk. Bova is an atomically walking on. It's a character from the comics where it was a cow that was evolved by the High Evolutionary to walk on 2 feet and could talk and everything, and it's kind of acts like a human, and was a midwife to
Wanda.
Yeah!
Excellent. That's fantastic. I don't know whether I want to drink her milk, though. That seems like a little too far.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's, again, I just call out, I'm so happy to be back in the MCU where these little small Easter eggs that probably mean absolutely nothing, but it's just a quick nod to these things.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. They're just nice little touchstones, as you say, Chris, on the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Any more notes, Derek?
I just don't think we've talked enough about Paul Bettany's amazing performance as he's been gummed up by the chewing gum that's been given to him. I love the whole scene, to be honest, as he walks into this, the meeting in the library and everybody's there, or the town hall, sorry, and everybody's there kind of going, oh, we didn't think you were going to be here. He's already speculated that the ne'er-do-wells in the neighbourhood that his friends all don't like are actually Wanda and Vision, that they're kind of going, you don't belong here. But he kind of ingratiates himself with all of them by sharing some gossip, of course, because that's what all of these meetings are about, gossiping about other people. But I love the moment when he's being asked, does he want to have a Danish with them, and he says, I don't eat food. I mean, I don't eat food between meals. At meal times, I'm a regular eating machine. Which basically it's Vision, so he is. But I love these scenes where he's trying to just fit in with the guys around him, and then, as we said earlier on, this kind of drunken cockney that comes out through the rest of the episode.
And it's just,
hilarious.
He goes, it's not eating when he takes the big red chewing gum. It's only for mastication. You see Herbert go, I don't do that. really nice. Good little point.
Yeah.
And I love just when he comes in, he says, well, I'll just stand here and wait till you open the floor up. And then they kind of do, but for donuts. But it's like, what is the situation with regular security patrols? And he talks about how to the interface with local law enforcement. It feels really kind of computer analog, the way he delivers it. What are the protocols? It's all very nicely played into his, his vision side, which is really cool.
Excellent.
I'll put one out to our listeners before we wrap up. The logo on the Cabinet of Mysteries, I don't know what that is. Pretty sure it's something. No idea what it is. Just if someone knows. I thought it might be a Doctor Strangey kind of type of one, but no idea.
I was just taking it as some variant on Vision, on Vision's
Could be,
Mind Stone.
Maybe.
That's kind of how I took it, because I was thinking that as well, with it being a magic cabinet, but when it kind of felt more, like the Mind Stone, but a variant of that, maybe done in the 60s style.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that would be really interesting.
In their non-magic magic cabinet.
Yes.
Love it. I love it.
Answers on a postcard, fellow defenders. But with the notes out of the way, what do we think of episode 2? Derek, do you defend WandaVision episode 2?
Absolutely. I'm loving how the pacing of this show is going. I'm really enjoying the little mysteries in the background. I'm loving how it's all ending, and I'm loving the lead from the 50s to the 60s and now into the 70s towards the end of the episode. So many weird things going on. So much intrigue. I can't wait for next week's episode. Really, really excited for it. Chris, do you defend episode 2 of WandaVision?
Yes, I defend, but I can understand why people are not. Yeah, I can see why people are like, what? Huh?
Really?
Yeah, I do. I understand it. It is so, like, the 50s episode was so 50s. This episode was so 60s. TV consumption and storylines have kind of evolved since then. This is good. This, for an average viewer, this is good. I think this is great.
Excellent.
It's do you defend, not
Exactly.
do you defend other people defending.
That is
They
true.
can have
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I need to go through your Twitter feed and your Instagram feed and your Facebook feed and pull out all these negative Nellies that you have following you, Chris, because this currently has a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a massive rating from critics, of course. Now there will always be people that will be against shows like this. Always be people that want the whole thing to drop. Remember what happened with The Boys? That had a 15% rating on Rotten Tomatoes because they weren't releasing the episodes all at one time. So,
I remember that. Yeah.
So remember that got taken apart for a couple of weeks, and then it's recovered its rating and got massive awards. But with WandaVision, you're definitely going to get people that will watch it and go, "Oh, I want to see the whole thing," or "It's not the MCU that I remember." I totally get that. What's interesting about this show, and I did want to point this out, what's interesting about the show is this is on Disney Plus. We know that, obviously. We're all watching it on Disney Plus. But that makes it slightly different, doesn't it, than most shows? It's not something that's appearing on Netflix, which has hundreds of different types of shows, or something that's appearing on regular TV or Amazon Prime. This is going directly to the audience who are willing to pay 10 quid to 20 quid a month for this service. So you're going directly to people that are kind of ready to watch this type of show, right? So it kind of gives you a different group of, a different audience, let's say, than something that would be going out to Netflix, where you could have any type of person falling onto the show and seeing whether they like it or not. Whereas with WandaVision, you're actually going to get a lot of people watching it that are predisposed to liking it, let's say.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked that we're spending 20 quid a month on Disney Plus.
But it is so worth it.
You need that 4K HD, John.
Well, that is true.
But John, then, what do you think? Do you defend this episode of WandaVision?
I do. I really do. I'm kind of loving this. I think it helps that it's 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes and it adds a nice pace to the show because, effectively this is one episode of most hour-long shows. I know that's an obvious statement to make, but, in here, we just see that kind of fracturing or that slight breakdown of the reality, that we didn't see in episode 1 with the inclusion of colour and certainly the sinister beekeeper, at the end. And I really, really like that. I thought the magic show, the talent show, was done just so well. I loved that. And for me, it's thrown up loads of questions about actually what's going on with Wanda here. Is she creating it? Is she being contained and trapped? Is it being created by someone else? And she's being monitored. And, in a sense, what's that gap between the end of the films to this situation? How did she get here? Where is she going to go from here? Even with those. So there's so much to answer here. And I think it's really, really good. And again, I'm really loving the, just the portrayal of these different eras in television by Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. Really good. So for me, I give this 4 Herbert Sherbets out of 5.
Nice.
I'm really liking it. But I mean, to your point, Chris, I get that this might not be everyone's cup of tea.
Oh.
There are loads of questions in this episode, John. We have one more question for our wonderful defenders. We have our pub quiz question, don't we?
We certainly do. Yes, get some iced tea, sit in the country club with some crazy queen of the cul-de-sac. And
as long as you add a little bit of alcohol, because who could get through this whole thing who isn't drunk?
we need to just put a little flagon of something into that iced tea just to spice it up. But question 2 from episode 2. What stage names do Wanda and Vision take in their magic act? Yes, what stage names do Wanda and Vision take in their magic act? Send in your answers to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. You can send it episode by episode or chuck all of your answers in right at the end after our episode 9 question.
Yes, closing date for the pub quiz is the 15th of February. That should be after all the episodes air and before we go into Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So we should be able to put together all of your pub quiz questions and choose the recipient of those wonderful WandaVision Funko Pops.
Yes.
Speaking of feedback, because you've just used feedback at TV Podcast Industries, we've got tons and tons of feedback, which may help to answer some of the questions that we have about the episode. First up, over on Twitter at Musical Concepts, otherwise known as the wonderful Matt Burdick, had some thoughts about the score for the show. He says, at TV Podcast Industries, I love the I Love Lucy comparisons made during the WandaVision first episode review podcast. Something to note, the scoring, while stylistically very similar to the little musical cuts you'd hear in I Love Lucy episodes, there is a great deal more scoring than in the I Love Lucy production, or Honeymooners, or any American 50s TV sitcoms. In the 50s, music helped mostly to transition from scene to scene, but there's a lot more use of cues in the middle of scenes in WandaVision, giving narrative context. An example would be right after Vision leaves for work and the music comes in for Wanda pondering the calendar and what the heart on the date means. The music takes a much larger narrative role than in most 50s sitcoms, though you might find a similar comparison in the style of scoring more in the shows like Leave It to Beaver, which came on air almost at the same time that I Love Lucy went off air. Really interesting ideas there, Matt.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff, actually. Thanks, Matt, for that. The role of music in whether it's an emotional attachment or, as you say, transitioning or building a context around a particular scene is just so important and can really make or break a movie, a TV show, and that's really interesting. The difference sort of from the I Love Lucy at the time, with just kind of focusing mainly on transitions to the bigger narrative context that that music has been used in this kind of version of it in present day. Great stuff.
Thanks for that, Matt. The score for the show, just to point out, is done by Christoph Beck, who, among many other things that he's done, scored Buffy and Angel. So I like that he's been brought on board for this show. Thanks so much, Matt. Let's get on to some feedback over on Facebook. Chris?
Yes. First up, we have the one, the only Ronaldo. He had this to say about episode 1. Wow, I thought I kinda knew what to expect, but I honestly didn't expect a full-blown recreation of a 60s sitcom. Elizabeth Olsen seems so natural in the role. It's a real pleasure to watch her. It took me only just slightly longer to get comfy with Paul Bettany as a sitcom vision, but by the end of the episode, I was so invested. Wanda seems to have more of a Tabitha power set rather than what she's had shown in the MCU. So it could be a bit confusing to see, but for those who have followed Scarlet Witch in the comics, it's exactly on point. Could also indicate it's all in her mind too. The change of camera use of the dinner table as Mr. Hart choked was the first sign of uneasiness, and it took my partner Eve off guard, who I'm excited to say seems really interested by the show. At 22 minutes, sans credits, sure it was short, but man did it fly by. Guess it was a sign of an enjoyable show. Loved the delicious ending with that mystery person watching the TV screen. I'm in for this ride the whole way. Thank you so much, Ray. And yep, I can't but agree with you on every aspect of that, as we talked about in episode 1. And I'm glad you've got your partner on board. Welcome, Eve. I'm hoping you're listening to the podcast too.
Absolutely. Hopefully it's playing round the house right now.
Yeah, thanks, Ronaldo. Yeah, I think that moment with Mr. Hart choking was really good in terms of taking it out of that lovely bubble gum version of the 50s. Really, really good. Yeah, next is Alan Thomas. Alan says, I was definitely amused in the first few minutes by the Bewitched homage, but I confess I got a bit bored with it by the middle section of the episode before my flagging interest was piqued again by the strangeness at the dinner table. Yeah, I mean, that dinner table scene is the thing where you become uneasy because it is setting just something, a disjoint, a disconnect in that world that is both real for them, but I think, like I was saying on episode 1, what they're doing is unreal for us, and seeing it in 2021.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's the unreality of it all is kind of really, really, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alan. Next up, we had some additional feedback from Claire Payne, who had this to say. I actually didn't know what to expect, but the lobster door knocker sold it. 30 minutes went so quickly. I can definitely think John agreed with you on the lobster door knocker.
Definitely. Lobster door knockers all the way. We've got ours on order for the front of our house.
Yeah. Ooh, I can't wait to see it. Claire went on to say, the comedy timing and delivery from Elizabeth and Paul was brilliant, but you can feel something simmering underneath. I found myself trying to work out for them what the heart meant on the calendar. Even the commercial for the toaster from Stark Industries was a nice touch. Looking forward to watching the next episode after I've listened to your podcast. Thanks, Claire. Hopefully you waited, you're savouring each episode like we are, and then you kind of went on to the next one and you didn't binge too quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry for splitting it up for everybody, because everybody should be able to binge their 50 minutes of these 2 episodes. Hopefully, it was worth popping on, listening to the podcast. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Claire.
Matthew Randall says, it's probably for the best that Elizabeth Olsen dropped her accent before this show. But both are so brilliant in these episodes. They almost seem like real old-timey characters, but you never forget they're Scarlet Witch and Vision, which is great. If people were confused by her power set beforehand, it's about to get a lot worse. Why can she change her dress and make rings appear, but not magic up some dinner? I don't even care. The dinner table choking scene had me really tense, but I feel like more could have happened. Maybe I'll understand it a bit better after listening to your episode on it. Thanks so much, Matt. It is really interesting, isn't it? We were rewatching Age of Ultron last week, and it's so jarring to hear Elizabeth Olsen with her Sokovian accent in the episode. Slightly Russian, slightly European, and now having an all-American accent in the show, and in every movie after Age of Ultron. It's just so jarring going back and hearing what her accent used to sound like.
So my wife is going to be quite happy. She'll never listen to this, but she'll be quite happy that I can say I mentioned this. She had one thing to say, which was, did you mention the accent? Did you mention the accent? Because like you guys, I watched the Legends section, the mini episodes on Disney Plus, and it had that accent
Yeah.
And essentially she was like, what, why does her accent change so much? Why? Like, have they explained it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, not really. It's just like over years. She goes, I'm different. I'm foreign and my accent hasn't changed that much. I was like, yeah, I know. It just, look, it's comic books.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Partially, it's to do with Wanda's powers, right? If she's able to magic up all the things she's able to magic up, she can change her accent too. Maybe that's all it is. We're all hearing it in this perfect American accent, but actually she's still got the Sokovian accent underneath it all. Both Matthew and Ray mentioned the power set of Wanda in the MCU. It is really interesting. When they started out, she was effectively created by Baron Strucker, so they gave her a very limited power set. She could just kind of explode things. And by the end of the movies, remember, in Endgame, she was going up against Thanos. She was able to take him on with how big her power was. And now in here, we see her in this 50s TV show, clicking her fingers, moving plates around in the air, doing the kind of magic you would see within those TV shows. So if anybody's kind of putting together their list of what powers Wanda has, it's going to be quite difficult to keep track of what her actual powers are and what they're showing off in the show. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing a bit more detail about what her real powers are, as opposed to the stuff that she can do for the TV show. I think it's partly just that setup, isn't it? That's why she can't make dinner, because it's much funnier if she can't make dinner with clicking her fingers.
Yeah. Dr. Bob Phillips says, I had no clue what to expect despite teasers and no idea when the colour would drain back into the 4x3 world of WandaVision. And the fact it stayed in the 50s made me sink entirely into the daft mess. Where is it going though? The toaster had a red light. The company is a front for something, and Mr. Hart, lobsters, magic, and a ukulele, and more importantly, has Agnes, the nosy neighbour, truly murdered her husband and is looking for a new partner? Yes, Ralph certainly likes to remain off screen.
Yep.
And maybe deep down, Agnes is a serial killer. They do say it's always by the people you know. So Wanda and Vision better watch out, I guess, for Agnes.
That would be such a weird twist of the story if she was a serial killer, wouldn't it?
It really would.
I think we also may have been watching too many serial killer shows on Netflix.
It could be. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for the feedback. Great to have you on board for WandaVision.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Bob. A few corrections to me for my insistence last week that the show was based around I Love Lucy. Lots of people getting in contact. Donald Dennis first says, that actually looked like the Dick Van Dyke house. And Jeff Charles echoed, I love the Dick Van Dyke show inspired set. How much does Agnes really know? How is Sword watching Wanda and Vision? I'm intrigued, and I think I'll need to rewatch this episode after I've seen all the rest. I love the payoff on the lobsters. That one ended up as the door knocker. Absolutely, Jeff. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a weird thing with the Dick Van Dyke show. Didn't really translate over here. We know Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. The character was played by the same actor. But the Dick Van Dyke show didn't really come into the 80s. No. I wonder if it's, and excuse me here, because we are a PG podcast, but I do wonder if the double entendre that's in two of those words may not have translated to British TV in the 80s. So I think the joke goes that you wouldn't be able to commission a show called that nowadays.
Absolutely.
Yes, I will agree with my podcast host that I did not even know that show was a show.
Mm-hmm.
I know
really?
I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
I know the actor Dick Van Dyke.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know he had his own show called The Dick Van Dyke Show.
There you go.
Yeah, I knew about the show, but I just never, ever watched it. But yeah, I loved the payoff of the lobsters as well, as everyone now knows. But thanks, Donald. Thanks, Jeff.
Yes, we have some additional feedback from Kelly Resendez, who continues to say, definitely not what I expected, but I don't really know what I expected. Strange, quirky, fun, funny. Where are they taking us with all this? Loved the old-time sitcom feel, the Dick Van Dyke Show, the Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, and I can't wait to see where they take us from here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, as you say, those apparently are all the inspirations for this first episode. I know one of them.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Ray Felix says, I saw the first two episodes and thought it was fab. It reminded me of Mr. Robot Season 2 and the beginning of Natural Born Killers, which both took a sitcom-style approach. If you've read the Avengers X-Men crossover House of M, the show is very loosely based on it, mixed with I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners. Yeah, thanks for that, Ray. Ronaldo also added Tom King's vision to that input into this world of WandaVision. It really is taking that House of M. I remember that being a really great comic, and I'm glad that, you know, that there is that, I guess, underlying darkness because, you know, there is some House of M sort of use in here, and that this happiness from the first 2 episodes is probably going to have so much horrendousness underneath it.
Yeah, good call out on Natural Born Killers as well. I completely forgot that opening scene, which is effectively how Mallory gets away from her family, is just told as if it's a sitcom, but really brutally violent conversations that are going on and this kind of stuff. So, and then it turns into the movie Natural Born Killers, which is brutally violent and quite explicit, but the opening of it was done in this really sitcom style where people are laughing at things they really shouldn't be laughing at. So very similar like that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks so much for that, Ray. First voicemail for the season, and I think this was actually the first piece of feedback we got. Middle of the night came in after the episodes had aired on Disney Plus. Xander Ray sent us in some feedback.
Hello, gents. How are you? It's so good to see the Defenders TV podcast back in my podcast stream. So glad my mates are back. WandaVision was amazing. I saw the first 2 episodes, but I'll only comment on the first. You guys are way off on what show this is, on what show it's supposed to be. This is not I Love Lucy at all. It's the Dick Van Dyke Show. As somebody who grew up on Nick at Night reruns of all that classic TV, this was so the Dick Van Dyke Show. Elizabeth Olsen is an amazing Mary Tyler Moore a sort of copy. But in general, I really like the show. I think it's very interesting, and their chemistry totally, I think, is gonna hold this show together no matter how weird it gets. Because Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen are great. Catherine Hahn, the neighbor, is like the perfect sexed up neighbor from all those old shows. Anyway, great to have you guys back again, and so looking forward to the entire season of WandaVision. I'm dancing at 5 a.m. right now. Later, mates.
Love it, Xander. I love that you've come back to us as well from Defenders TV podcast. Yeah, we've been off air on Defenders TV podcast for like a year or so, and suddenly having episodes reappear again in the Marvel feed's great. Great to have our listeners back from them. Yeah, you seem just as excited, I think, as we were when we watched the first couple of episodes of this brand new show, because it's so not what we expected. I don't mind being corrected about my use of I Love Lucy by our awesome listeners, because you guys always know more than we do. So we love hearing from you. Thanks so much for that, Xander. On to episode 2 feedback. Victor Sellers sent in an email to us, again, telling me that I was wrong on I Love Lucy. He says, I think the episode leans more towards Dick Van Dyke than I Love Lucy, especially the house. The home is very similar to the Petrie residence. You've probably seen episode 2 by now. The house is now closer to Donna Reed. Love your podcasts. Ciao, Victor. Thanks so much, Victor. Yeah, there's a reference that we definitely wouldn't get. Donna Reed was another show from the late 50s, early 60s in the US that Donna Reed, very famous actress, was in lots of films that you've seen if you like black and white films, including one of my favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life. So really interesting that she had her own show as well, Chris. Like you were saying, didn't know Dick Van Dyke had a TV show. I never knew that Donna Reed had a TV show, but interesting references. Thanks so much for that, Victor.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Derek absolutely said it was I Love Lucy, but look, I got it even further off the mark in that I thought it was Bewitched straight from the first episode, because I didn't I didn't get into I Love Lucy as much as Bewitched. Dick Van Dyke, it's one of those that knew about but never watched. Right. I just guess we thought he was going to be a chimney sweep in it all the time, and dancing on the roof tiles. But
is that why Vision's doing the kind of Cockney accent in this episode? Is he
That'd be hilarious.
Is he referencing that?
So yeah, I had the first 2 episodes pegged at Bewitched just because I guess Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda is doing magic.
Yeah.
But I will quote Vision from episode 1 where he goes, "Yakety yak. Please talk back." Yes. Just keep sending us this. Like, again, like, there are going to be blind spots, but we're so happy that you, our fellow defenders, can send us this and actually point out these shows and we didn't get and we didn't know, and now we can actually quickly jump back and see.
Absolutely. I am sure that we had a segment before which was correct Derek segment, so keep doing it. I love it.
Yeah, always. The next piece of feedback we had was from 084. They had this to say by email. "I really loved the WandaVision premiere, and it's great that I loved it for different ways than I expected to too. Of course, I was going to inhale the first Marvel Studio content in a year and a half and have rose-colored glasses, but they really delved into driving the story with style above all. The first 2 episodes were literally a 1950s and 60s sitcom about a witch with a robot husband with campy and silly plot lines straight out of that time period. Even the special effects were decades old, and I loved it. And of course, the MCU fan in me gobbled up all the mystery sprinkled in, all those sword logos, Geraldine, Agnes, the helicopter, the radio, the colour red, and of course the guy wearing a suit that somehow looks too much like a beekeeper to be AIM. Oh, plus the Stark Toaster and Strucker Hydra wristwatch commercials. You can't take your eyes off the screen for a second. Can't wait to see how all this story keeps on going. Until next time, 084. Thank you so much, 084. Yeah, I literally this is like most of all of us and all your fellow defenders. It's just the one thing I will, as you say, you can't take your eyes off the screen for a second.
Absolutely.
It is going to
definitely.
be sprinkled. I don't even think sprinkled is the best term anymore. I think they're going to back up a dump truck of Easter eggs and just throw them onto each episode, and we're going to be finding these little mysteries for the next couple of years.
But sprinkled sounds nicer than dumb.
It does.
Yes, it does. Sorry. From a grammatical perspective and from a thesaurus, yes, it does.
Excellent.
Sprinkle is better than dump.
Absolutely. 084, so great to hear from you again. We haven't heard from 084 since I think back Watchmen as well. Yep. So great to have you back on board for the Marvel train or the Marvel dump truck, as
absolutely.
Chris is going to call it.
Thanks,
the Marvel
084.
dump truck. Choo choo. That's a train. But anyway.
Over on our Facebook group, first up was Ronaldo. He goes, "Hi guys, it was a given that we'd watch the second episode after the premiere, and this builds on the charm of both Wanda and Vision. Mm-hmm. A cast of new characters like Dottie and the Neighbourhood Watch really showcase more of the town and give it that homely community vibe. Olsen again is excellent, and Bettany, especially after chewing gum and the opening scene whilst they practice their magic trick, is charming and hilarious. Mm-hmm. It really looks like both leads are enjoying themselves. We get more tidbits into what is really happening outside, and I get the sense that the house across the street may be the source. I'm assuming that's where the toy plane came from. At first, I thought we were going to see the comic characters swarm when the beekeeper came out of the manhole, but in the end it just became a really random scene. I'm getting more of a sense now that Wanda is the perpetrator of this ideal world, whereas in the previous episode it seemed to allude to there being an organization orchestrating it. The fact Wanda says no and things rewind seem to suggest Wanda is altering reality to a degree. It'd be interesting to see how they explain this, as although it's a common trait of hers in the comics, in the MCU, she appeared to have been limited to just telekinesis. Mm-hmm. The chant for the children, must have some bearing, and it may well be connected to Wanda's pregnancy that we see late in the episode. Comic fans again would appreciate this massive event for Wanda in the comics. Overall, I'm liking how the show appears to have married Tom King's Vision series with a pseudo House of M vibe for Wanda. I'm enjoying every second of this show, and you can bet I'll be rewatching it, if not only to answer the TV podcast industry's pub quiz questions. Oh, excellent. A new entrant. Can't wait to hear how you all view the show so far in your indelible manner. Next week can't come quickly enough. Thanks so much, Ronaldo. Yeah, no, it's interesting with these external influences now with the beekeeper. I was just thinking my uncle was a beekeeper. I wonder if he was associated with sword. I don't know now. But it was, really interesting about that it's in her head. I guess, like we were discussing on the podcast, it would be interesting to know, are they creating it and she's manipulating it, or she created it, as you're saying, and maybe they are in some way containing it because of some existential threat to the world. So it'd be really interesting. And the mix in vibe with Tom King's Vision and House of M. These are great storylines to be sort of picking from for these two characters for sure.
Absolutely.
So cannot wait for next week's episode.
Excellent. Yes, thanks so much, Ray. I think after watching these episodes, the first thing I wanted to know was, what do other people think about this? Because I was going, I really enjoyed that. That was really good fun. I wonder what other people think about it. So hopefully we're providing a little bit of that for you, and I love hearing all the feedback from all of our fellow defenders. Next up, Alan Thomas says, I liked this consistently better than the premiere episode. 4 out of 5 versus a 3 out of 5 for the initial episode. Although the toy plane being at first the one touch of colour was awfully Pleasantville, I take it by what we saw at the end that the whole show will be in colour from now on. Feels like they need to pick up the pace a bit in developing the actual plot, as opposed to presumably meaningless sitcom hijinks, but it's only 7 more short episodes, so I'm willing to see where it goes. Does anyone think any of the other characters, like co-workers or neighbours, are real sentient beings with actual agency? I suspect not, but again, time will tell. Thanks for that, Alan. Nice call out to Pleasantville. A show where effectively as colour takes over the world, everybody becomes more cognizant of what's going on around them and becomes more real, I suppose. That's a really good call out there. I do wonder if the characters that are surrounding them are plants maybe by Sword to look over, Wanda and Vision. That's what's going on there. But at the moment there seem to be going along with the script of the TV show that they're supposed to be following, I suppose. But the one that stood out to me in the episode is that meeting in the town hall as Vision arrives and everybody's having a conversation before he arrives. You know, you wonder whether that is actually a conference between all the other characters that are playing their roles in this world, but definitely something we'll see as the episodes go along.
Yeah, and I guess with Wanda's reversal of time there right at the end, like, you know, you see it being the whole TV screen. What I mean is it's not just simply Wanda and Vision reversing back through, like the whole thing has the lines running through it as it rewinds, like the old video players.
Exactly.
And so I guess all the other characters must suddenly be finding themselves reversing as well, or suddenly, you know, if they have agency, if maybe they're connected to Sword, that they find themselves in colour, for example, or whether they're just, as you say, not really sentient, because again, that scene with Dottie with the blood, did she actually see red blood, or did she just see
grey?
The grey blood from that? Do they see them even know that they're in black and white versus colour or whatever? So really, really interesting.
Didn't Dottie kind of reset to the type of line that a character like that would say? You know, she says, "How do you get blood out of your clothes? Do it yourself." Basically, is the way that she says it. So she's kind of reverting to a 60s housewife kind of thing. Yeah,
thanks again, Alan, for that. Kale Hensley said, "Did anyone get a good look at the logo on the back of the beekeeper's outfit? I'm pretty sure it was Sword, but I couldn't help but wonder if that was an AIM reference." Yeah, thanks, Kale. Certainly when I saw that and I saw the beekeeper, I was kind of going, that has a nice little reference. Whether it's, you know, going to pan out that way to AIM, which I kind of quite like AIM. I like the they're pretty useless really, but I kind of like that as bad guys. You know, it's kind of like in the old Bond movies where, you know, people just kind of chuck themselves off like high places, even though Bond hasn't actually touched them. They kind of do that. They're like lemmings. They just jump off a cliff.
Exactly.
And I should also say I hadn't seen 084's reference to AIM as well. So, good catch as well from
just Kale's, wasn't it?
084. Yeah, it was just Kale's.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Kel.
And it was definitely Sword on the back of the beekeeper.
Yep, and on the helicopter as we pointed out in the episode. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Kale. We had some additional feedback from Matthew Randell, who had this to say: I think I could watch 100 of just these straight, goofy old sitcom episodes and not get bored. But it is nice to know they're building up to something. And it's nice to see Vision in full colour again. The grey was giving me sad Infinity War flashbacks. Like, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, good
Literally
catch.
the end. Good catch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice kind of thematic feed into that, actually, that he's at the end of the MCU movies he's grey, and in here he's grey. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, good catch, Matt. Kelly Resendez also caught the same thing. She says she loves how episode 2 keeps with the light sitcom feel, but then the Twilight Zone-ish switch more than meets the eye. I feel Wanda is a catalyst here, obviously, whether knowingly creating this world for herself or she's in this world and her subconscious and seeing the cracks in it. And the question from Kelly at the end is, did we start in black and white because that was the last vision of Vision that Wanda saw? So exactly the same thing. I did not think about that at all, but
really good point.
As he's drained of his powers, as he's drained of the Mind Stone from Thanos crushing his head, he turns black and white. So yeah, that's a really good catch, guys. Well done, Kelly and Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly and Matt.
Yes, we additionally had some other feedback from Claire Payne, who said, I'm really enjoying the pacing of this show and the second episode really exposing the Truman Show elements. I love the commercials, and this time a man's watch which has Hydra and the octopus skull syndrome on the watch face. The male voice coming through the radio saying Wanda's name sounded like Happy Hogan, played by Jon Favreau. Ooh. I don't know if there could be a connection in there. In why would he be saying that? I really do enjoy the relationship between Vision and Wanda. The comedy really does make me laugh out loud. I am so invested in this show. I'm not even going to overthink where this could go. Roll on episode 3. Couldn't agree more, Claire. Roll on episode 3.
I love it, yeah. Not going to overthink this. Let's just get to the next episode. I totally agree with you, Claire. I wish we couldn't overthink it. We totally overthink it for an hour. Just one kind of call on how would Wanda know Happy Hogan. Remember, everybody was at the funeral of Tony Stark at the end of Endgame, including basically all of the characters. Everybody that was alive at the end was there. So as far as I remember, Wanda was there in that final scene as well. So remember, the world did continue after Endgame, so they may have formed relationships and bonds with different characters in those future moments after Endgame. But we don't know when this takes place, of course. It could be in an instant this whole piece takes place. We will definitely find out more as the episodes go on.
Richard Blaze says, here is one for all the cool kids out there. Just watch WandaVision, and Anya from Buffy the Vampire Slayer is in it. Made me feel well old. She looked like Anya's mum. If Anya had a mum, spoiler, she was a demon in Buffy. Bunnies, it must be bunnies. Man, I am so hip. Top.
Nice job, nice. We think you're pretty hip, Richard. We called the same thing. We're just as excited. Thanks, Richard. Claire Laffer says, I love that chewing gum turns Vision into a drunk cockney.
Absolutely.
Yep. You should see what a chewing gum does to John.
It doesn't turn me into a drunk cockney. I don't know what it turns me into.
The alcohol does.
Yeah, it's alcohol that turns me into a drunk cockney. Or dare I say a sniff of alcohol turns me into a drunk cockney. And then a sleepy cockney.
Yep. We also had some feedback from Jeff Childs, who said, now the house interior is Bewitched inspired. I also like the transition from twin beds to a queen. I'm curious to find out if Wanda is creating the world consciously or subconsciously. She seems to have control, like when she rewound the scene after the beekeeper showed up, but she also seems surprised by a great many things. yeah, I think that's just going to be one of the ongoing mysteries of the show, which is how much control does she control?
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll see it as it goes on.
And Jeff, I'm well impressed by your ability to know that it's a queen bed just from looking at it. I can't even do anything like that. Like, whenever I have to get new sheets, it's kind of out comes the measuring tape, because I never remember what size bed it is that we have.
It's really easy. You're a queen. The size of the bed's a queen.
But weirdly, I have a king.
What's shocking is the amount of times you've come back with sheets for a twin bed, which I don't Finally, for Facebook feedback, Sandy Resenda says, my theory is that Wanda has been captured, maybe by Hydra. Experiments are being done on her, and this is all in her mind. Good theory, Sandy. Yeah, I think that's quite
another
close
good theory, actually. Yeah. That Hydra want their intellectual property back, so to speak.
Maybe, maybe. We are going to go
Hydra's Disney!
Hail Disney. Finally, we're going to go on to some voicemails. Mark Kirkman sent in a voicemail to us for this episode, for the first 2 episodes, actually.
Hello, TV podcast industries. Mark Kirkman here from Panels to Pixels podcast. I just wanted to throw you guys some feedback and my thoughts on WandaVision that you guys are covering across the pond on your podcast. You guys are able to do that a lot sooner than we are, Steve and I. And I'm sure Steve is probably sending out his own voicemail just the same. So I just had a few notes that I had based upon the WandaVision episodes 1 and 2. So first off, the intro with the classic Marvel Disney intro was amazing. We finally get that. That's something that's not just within the movies itself that we knew before 2019. This is something new to Disney Plus. This is new to Marvel on pretty much like a TV platform, because this is the first of what we get. So that really got the juices rolling, and I just love it that we get that first and foremost. And to continue on, basically, I love the classic black and white with the Bewitched theme for the first 2 episodes. They have the introductions very similar to like I Love Lucy, and then they go into Bewitched, which is amazing and it's fun. I just love the way they actually film too is just intense. It really looks good on my 65-inch OLED TV and an Atmos surround sound in my place. The sound is amazing. Plus, I just love how when they do these episodes, they're doing this whole feel of similar to the movie Pleasantville with Tobey Maguire, of all things, former Spider-Man himself from Sony, as well as the Truman Show, like she's trapped into this kind of TV. Now, they also mentioned within the episodes themselves, Vision regards her, even within the first episode with the boss in the dinner, saying it's something from Sokovia. We haven't really heard any of that in a long time of Wanda being from Sokovia. I thought that was pretty cool. Though the humor is there, this is one of the beginning of what we're supposed to get, like pretty much a glimpse of what's to come within Wanda's madness. And I think she, in Sokovia as a child, grasped to these TV shows that grew up on these. And we're going to see these because that's what they have. They have old classic TV shows, and that's what they're going through. And this is her safe place, her safe haven. And plus we get to see Vision in a different light of being a little bit more, he has more personality to him than he ever did within the movies itself. So, just to give you an idea of where my mind is going, there are key points within the first episodes that Wanda is aware of what is going on, but is so engulfed with being in that world to be happy. It's her happy place. But reality does shine in. So in the first episode, we get when Vision's boss is choking, she emphatically tells Vision to stop this. And he does. Well, he does because he, takes the food that's out of his boss's mouth while he's choking using his powers. But you could see that that's what's going on. Then in the second episode, after we get the baby bump at the very end, after we get that reveal, like, oh, look at this. And then they're outside and they see the beekeeper coming out of the sewer. Then the scene actually resets, and then they're back to where they were before the beekeeper comes out of the sewage. the manhole. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then on top of that, keys that I've seen. Did anybody see sword in certain locations? That was pretty cool. So you got to keep apprised to what's going on within the episode. I saw a lot of sword symbols within the first 2 episodes. And whose voice was that on the radio? Honestly, I'm thinking that's Clint Barton. And he's trying to reach. She's got to be in some sort of facility, and they're trying to wake her up from something. She's somewhere that they're trying to save her. Maybe she's in a coma or something. I do not know, but within her own mind, she's creating this own world, and who knows what her powers are doing in the real world. This is my mind just brainstorming, dude. So you guys could take that up however you want. But I look forward to what you guys have to hear, because I'm not going to give away all my good spoiler stuff, because I want people to listen to it on my podcast. I love you guys. We try to promote you guys as much as we can. Steve loves you. I love listening to you guys and your takes on what you have to offer, whether it be in DC, Marvel, or anything that you're covering at that point. So I look forward to listening to you and see what you have to say. And I'll be listening just the same as everybody else. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your voicemail. Really good to hear your thoughts about the episode. Yeah, love listening to Panels to Pixels as well with our good friends Mark and Steve on their thoughts about episodes of TV related to comic books. They're both really fun to listen to, and great to hear your thoughts, Mark.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be listening to your thoughts about WandaVision when you get around to it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I like you mentioning about Sokovia. I think, it kind of gets forgotten that she's Sokovian.
Because her accent's gone, John.
Because of the accent, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of a nice kind of just nod back with the Sokovian greeting. I liked your term, the sewerage beekeeper. I tell you what, I will not be eating that honey.
No.
And of course, now we have 3 names in the hat for the voice on the radio. We've got Clint Barton, as you mentioned, Mark, but also Happy Hogan. And of course, presumably something that's becoming even more improbable, said Steve Rogers. So I guess it will be Big Bird from Sesame Street in the end. Who knows?
We also have Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who have a TV show coming out directly after WandaVision. It may be Bucky Barnes or Sam Wilson that could be on the call there, potentially tying it into the next TV show. But some nice names in the hat there. Just quickly, since you did mention Steve Rogers, you know that whole rumor has been kind of debunked by Chris Evans. He basically said, "I've never heard about this." So that rumor that he's coming back to the MCU has been debunked by him. But let's see. There's no true confirmation from either Marvel or him. I suppose is where we are.
True, that is where we are. But I will say very quickly that the actress who's playing Jessica Walters in The Incredible Hulk,
Tatiana Maslany, yeah.
When the reporter went to her and went, "Hey, we hear you were literally being cast for this," she went, "No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I haven't even spoken to them." And she had been cast, and she just hadn't signed the contract yet.
Yeah.
The rumor is that they're going to, and they're trying to sign a contract, so he has to say, first I've heard it, similar. I expect.
It's also one of those wonderful rumors that can be made up by websites because, well, the Marvel Universe is going to go on for another 50 years. And if Chris Evans ever reappears in the MCU, they'll go, "We broke that story in January 2021. Look how far ahead we were." But there you go. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks so much, Mark, for your feedback. Great to hear from you. We have your co-host from Panels to Pixels as our final voicemail for our awesomely long feedback section. Thanks so much to everybody who's been sending their feedback. Steve Brown, take it away.
Hello, TV Podcast Industries. This is Steve, and I have watched both episodes 1 and 2 of WandaVision, and wow, a really good start. I will admit, I'm glad I watched a video or a YouTube video this week that kind of gave a recap of what was going on, but you really don't need to know what's going on prior to this, at least at this point in the story. So I'm excited for the rest of this season. I love the aspect ratio changing there at the end, so we know that someone is watching what they're doing and someone is trying to help them. Obviously, someone's trying to reach out to Wanda. I loved the Beach Boys Help Me Wanda was incredible, because the first time I heard it, I was like, are they saying Wanda instead of Rhonda? And I was like, yep, they're saying Wanda. So I loved it. I thought it was great. And again, it's we're seeing that there's obviously something deeper going on. So I'm excited to find out. The only thing that I think that bothers me a little bit is that it's only Wanda that's noticing that something's wrong, that Vision hasn't noticed that something's off yet. So, but maybe that'll come later. All right. Can't wait to hear your podcast. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Steve. Always great to hear from you. Always great to get your feedback. It does sound like they changed it to Wanda instead of Rhonda, but really? I don't know. It just, in my head, then I've listened to it a couple times. I'm like, it doesn't, maybe it's just, I don't know.
It sounds like the original, but maybe I'm changing it in my head. Or
yes, exactly.
Yeah, because we want it to be Wanda. But that's really cool, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That aspect ratio change at the end as well was a really nice little touch as well. I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, Vision so far, not really, kind of getting any sense, but I guess if he's dead or a creation of Wanda's mind, maybe he never will. So
maybe
it'll be interesting to see if he does kind of spot that, because then you kind of go in, is that Wanda giving him that power, or is it something else entirely? As I say, I did mention about a kind of a shadow of Vision coming from the fact that he died twice. I guess he is robotic Jesus in that sense, coming back from the dead, but then he's never truly alive, is he?
That is a much deeper question that we're going to answer on this episode. Thanks everybody for your feedback. Everybody now is in the hat for the WandaVision Funko Pops coming up at the end of the season. Please keep sending us your feedback. We love to hear your thoughts on the show. As I say, we'll be recording on Saturdays every week. But if you missed the cutoff point for your feedback in episode 3, or if you've missed the cutoff point for episode 1 or 2, we will read the feedback on the next episode we record. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, or you can even follow us on Twitter or Instagram at TV Podcast Industries, or TV Pod Industries on Twitter. That's the one. We'd love to get some reviews on Apple Podcasts as well, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Find us on there by just searching for TV Podcast Industries. Love to hear what you're thinking about the podcast.
Yes, you can also support us by heading on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries and help keep our producer caffeinated as we go into the MCU extension of what will be another fantastic 7 episodes.
Yes, thanks so much. We'll be back next week with WandaVision, imaginatively titled Episode 3. Which will air on Disney Plus from Friday, the 22nd of January. Guys, genuinely, I waited to release episode 1 podcast. We had it recorded on Thursday, all edited, ready to go. I waited to release it to get the actual episode name when it came up at Disney Plus. Turned on Disney Plus at 8 a.m. our time on Friday, and the episode title was Episode 1. I was so disappointed. Oh, so angry. But anyway, it's just a little bit of a pet peeve, I suppose, that they don't have a name for the episode. It's not that difficult. But anyway, there you go.
I beg to differ. It could be quite difficult. It could be the name of the world is Episode.
Maybe.
And who knows?
And maybe that links in with the Truman Show.
Oh, yeah.
It is an episode of an episode.
Maybe.
Of an episode of an episode.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much. As always, it is fantastic to be back with you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us and for all the feedback and for listening to us. It's really great to have you on board for WandaVision. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending.
Bye.
For the children.
For the children. Bye.